we are talking about solving problem of women farmers without the presence of their representations. I join the agriculture world and I walk into rooms and there is absence of women.
So when it comes to environment, you can also think about sustainability. You would like to describe the future, maybe the next few decades.
Almost 50% farmers are women. So whether it is a woman farmer or a woman who understands what a woman would require, that lens is missing. We are putting all our heart and money into developing Farmer Chat, which is the last mile solution for smallholder farmers.
We have to be very conscious about what we consume.
It's the farmer who's putting the food on a plate. It's a farmer who is also facing the challenges. It's the farmers who are losing when there is a geopolitical. We are able to make sure that there's lesser risk for them. I would say that if all of that happens, then I see a more stronger community.
The misconception about the social development sector.
Misconceptions.
Nidhi, thank you so much for being part of this conversation.
Thank you, Santosh. Thank you for having me here. Excited to chat with you.
Super. So I would love to know Nidhi, because everybody knows Nidhi as a social sector pioneer, a CEO of Digital Green India. But I would love to understand Nidhi, the young Nidhi, and the early signs of the Nidhi to be.
Sure. Pioneer, I don't know, but to really know the Nidhi of today, of course, you need to also know the Nidhi of like a younger Nidhi. And I think what was there and what stays even today is the enthusiasm and the energy. I was like that as a child, I was like that as a young person, and I continue to be like that. And the sector has only added to my passion and energy. But a lot of this has come, I have to give it to my growing years because my father was in the defense service. I've heard stories of him being in the 71 war, and that really gave me that sense that one needs to contribute to the country, one needs to contribute to the society. It was a very subtle thing in my life, right? Nobody had to say this. I grew up in that environment. And as I grew up, I just had to figure out what's my calling. And life just, I just went with the wave, and life has just brought me here where I am. So that's the common thread between a younger Nidhi and today's Nidhi, that one needs to contribute to the society, one needs to contribute to the country.
And being, by virtue of being a defense kid, if I can use the term, you would have traveled quite a bit as well.
Yes. I've changed many schools. There have been times when I've changed schools after every 2 years, made many friends, forgot many friends. But yes, lots of adjustments and learnings. And that's kind of contributed to me being very agile.
Right. And also empathetic towards the surroundings.
Absolutely. And also understanding struggles. It's not like always being in the perfect school. Sometimes, like, we had to change the city in the middle of a term. And I've been to schools in the northeast of the country where they were not proper education system. Like, while there was a proper school, but there was absence of teachers. And I'm talking about many decades ago. But yeah, but that taught you how to struggle, how to still manage within that limited means.
Right.
And it makes you a survivor out of you.
And that lens also would be helping you in the work that you do pan-India significantly.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Santosh, empathy, because that really makes you understand that different cultures, different states, different challenges in different areas, different climatic conditions, right?
Correct.
I've been in a area where we had a curfew for 2 months and none of us went to school, right? And we were in the house for 2 months, right? Which meant a pre-online education system, right? No education for 2 months, right? So, but then I think it just made you more resistant, more resilient, and stronger.
Yeah, you know this will happen and this will be overcome
Absolutely.
in some manner.
Absolutely, yes.
So you use a term environment. So when it comes to environment, you can also think about sustainability. So if I were to use the term sustainability, what is the first image that you have in your mind?
If I really don't use a bookish definition, but I say for me, sustainability is like a community of people which is not using too much of the resources from the planet Earth, and making sure that the community is somehow paying back, but also self-sufficient, self-reliant, and very inclusive.
And is it something that is something that has to be reinforced, or we are consciously ignoring?
When you say
In
reinforce,
the sense that we have to be very conscious about what we consume, conscious consumption.
I think that definitely, and that's a lot to do with behavior change, because I think, especially today in the time of too much of awareness, too much of social media, too much of availability, right? We are not very conscious about what we are using, what we are wasting, what we really need. So, yes, it needs to come with a lot of understanding, awareness, knowledge, consciousness of what we really need, how we can use these resources in a better way.
So I'm sure that is the work that is also embedded with what you're doing right now. But before I go into that, I would love to understand your current organization from a lens of a 15-year-old child.
um, Santoshi was saying today's 15-year-old child really doesn't need that. I think we're talking about they can teach us a few things. And the lens has to be very different from what we thought a 15-year-old child, especially we work in the area of AI.
Right,
But so I'm sure a 15-year-old can tell me 10 things.
right.
But if I really have to look at it in a very simple way, we are Digital Green are building technology which is for a last mile user like a smallholder farmer. And what we are giving them is a tool in their pocket, which is basically an accessible tool which will help them to get the right information at the right time, and something that will help them to either increase their productivity or decrease the input costs, but really help them to increase the income end of the day.
Right. So when you're saying tool and access, this is leveraging technology.
Yes.
And you did mention briefly that you also do work in the field of AI. So is this that has it been the journey from the beginning, or have you evolved, and how has the journey been for you?
While I've not been with Digital Green for these 17 years, but I have seen the journey and I'm actually proud to be a part of this journey where we are today.
Right.
But, where we started with, the whole uh, objective still continues. The approach has changed. So while we started with this whole thing about how technology or how video-based learning can really help to bridge a advisory gap for smallholder farmers. For us, it was always about smallholder farmers. They need contextual, timely information. How can we make sure that we can give them better access to that, easier access to that? And for years, we have worked on building local videos with the farmers uh, in their own language and disseminating it through the agriculture extension system.
Right.
That years of working with these farmers gave us a lot of insights, learnings, understanding of what is their need, what are they using, how are they consuming this knowledge. As the world has evolved, Digital Green has evolved because we know that technology today has a different definition, dimension, and from being a technology of video, making videos, to today using a product approach, and in the last couple of years using Gen AI, which is basically objective remains the same, just the technology has evolved and the scale has evolved. Because while with the video based learning, we have reached out to about 8 million farmers over the last 15, 16 years. But in the last 2 years, with the product approach using AI, where we are making sure that AI is used to make it more contextual, more inclusive, more accurate, we are today already over a million user in about a year and a half. So that's bringing in the scale and more accuracy into it.
Right. So usually, we all because AI and tech, and I feel it's always like a triangle, right? Your ability, your knowledge, then there's technology, and then I would say AI. And AI has filled that triangle very beautifully. But still, somewhere adoption becomes a bit of a challenge. So how has that been, especially with the group that you work with?
Adoption is not the easiest thing.
Yeah.
If I could quote Aristotle, there's a famous quote which says that human being is a rational being, right? A man is a rational being. But if you really look at how human beings or farmers are looking at any of that, it has to be a lot about, is it really adding value to what they do,
Yeah.
right? And adoption is not about saying, oh, here, this is a product, this is a tool,
Yeah.
use it. It is all about building their trust.
Yeah.
Is it something which was going to really help them to change something in their life? Is it going to move the needle? Is it going to help them increase their income, right? So adoption is all about, one, understanding the need of the consumer, in our case, which is the farmer. It is about making sure that whatever you deliver, right, you don't break their trust.
Right.
And it is also about giving them access,
Right.
and also all making sure that a lot of elements of risk are mitigated in that. So we see, actually, when we used to do video based learning, we had an adoption of 24% of all the advisory which we used to give out through the video based learning, which was probably much higher than a regular conventional way of providing advisory. That used to be less than 10%. Today, with the AI based application Farmer Chat that we have, the adoption is already 60%.
Wow.
And that is coming because of making it more accurate, contextual, timely, and using trust as a base on which we build all of this.
So they're also trusting the engagement that they're having with the bot, and they are seeing that that is a good response that they're receiving.
Absolutely. See, if any of us have to use something, we all use apps,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We only see, we will not use, even if it's for free, right? We won't be spending time on it unless it's adding some value. We see some translation. If it's giving us, let's say, something to do with health, if we are getting some advisory, if I can see that if I use a practice and that helps me to have a better digestion system, then I'll keep on going back to it, right?
Correct.
And the same way it works for the farmer also. They see that there's an advisory on a pest protection. And if I've used that advisory, then how that has helped to save my crop. If I've understood it, then I'm anyway the brand ambassador, right?
Yeah.
So I will make sure all the farmers around me, they also become Farmer Chat users, because they know that this product is a product that one farmer trusts.
Yes.
If one farmer trusts, 20 more will trust it.
True. So when you say farmers, the limited understanding I have is that 50% plus farmers are women. Is that data
Yeah,
correct?
I think we say more than 40% farmers are, almost 50% farmers are women. Yeah.
Women. Are they the ones who are engaging with you, or are they male counterparts engaging with you?
We are very intentional in our approach. So, we are committed to ensuring that as an organization, we are committed to more than 60% of women. But right now, as we are scaling up our product, for us, the immediate goal is to ensure at least 45% of our users are women.
Loved it.
And we are on it. So it was not easy. It's not been easy,
Right.
but we are on it because, as I mentioned, it's intentional. Especially today, when more and more men farmers, the male farmers, are moving to urban areas, women who have always been a part of the agriculture ecosystem were never decision makers.
Right.
Today, they have to become decision makers. So they need something which will help them to take decisions.
Right.
6 o'clock in the morning, they want to understand, oh, I've got to the field and there's a problem. Now, who do I go to? Right? I have a product, I have a tool, Farmer Chat, on my phone. I just ask the question and I'll get the answer. That gives me an agency also, right? So, this is how women are getting more and more engaged out here. Men use it differently, women use it differently. And that's what we're also trying to understand. That if we understand how both the genders are using that, then also we'll be able to strengthen the product accordingly. But moving forward, we see anyway in the agriculture ecosystem, women playing a key role out here.
Absolutely. Okay, so now an interesting question for you. So we spoke about farmers and women, and let me shift the lens to the room that you are sitting. 40%, 50% contribution of women there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that's an equal representation in the room that you are working, especially with tech and AI. So I would love to understand that and why and how can we work towards making that better.
I've noticed, I have been in the tech world for a while, and we all agree that there is a leaky pipeline as you get senior. at the starting point, tech world has a lot of women, but as you start growing, there's a leaky pipeline, and a lot of women drop off for various reasons. So tech industry definitely has an imbalance from women point of view, especially at leadership. I joined the agriculture world, and I walk into rooms, and there is absence of women. There's absolute absence of women on the table. And when I say absence of women in the leadership role, right? So now it's basically an intersection of technology, especially AI, and agriculture. And I've been in rooms where I feel we are talking about building an inclusive technology. We are talking about solving, a problem of farmers, especially women farmers, without the presence of their representation. So whether it is a woman farmer or a woman who understands what a woman would require, right? That lens is missing. And I'm doing my bit in terms of wherever I can voice it, because I also take it as I have more responsibility on my shoulders right now. Because on a table of 30, if there are two or three women,
Right.
then I need to make sure my voice is heard,
Yeah.
right? Because I have responsibility not towards me or the organization only, but those women farmers that I'm representing. So yes, without hesitation, I have to accept that there is absence in the world of technology, AI, and agriculture, and the intersection definitely has that huge gap, and it needs to be, because unless we address it, a lot will stay very, very just superficial.
Yeah. And like you interestingly mentioned that you're making a conscious decision to get there about 50%, 45 to 50% participation on your app from women.
Yeah.
What kind of metrics or goal can you work towards to increase participation in your room? Is it at all possible? Like is it possible for you to do something there?
You mean when we are in the room that I am?
Yeah. Why can how can the three become five? That's just
Yeah,
very
definitely. I think one, as I mentioned, that I take responsibility. So if I am there, I'm assuming others will get the confidence to be there too, because it's all about seeing that, oh, somebody is there, and you always then get the courage to do it also. Also, I think as we are building teams, we are making, we are getting partners, all of that. We are ensuring that women are also as what we are designing sitting on the table, right? So also wherever there's a possibility, making sure that you are voicing that, making sure that it may take us another 10 years or 15 years, but at least whenever I get the opportunity to talk to the younger girls, right, I always talk about it, right? Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only the girls, it's the men in the room, right?
Yes.
My voice is always about telling the men in the room. I've been in some uncomfortable conversations where I've actually said it. And I know that very senior people have been uncomfortable about it. But I just realized that, yeah, if I can voice it, somebody who is not getting the confidence, who's still sitting at the manager level, will get the confidence that if Nidhi could do it, even I can do it. We have people in my team who have come to me and said, today I feel you can do it. It's a man's world. Agriculture is a man's world. But if you can do it, so can I. So I'm looking forward to growing out there. So that is the kind of of course, whether it is from any policy point of view, whether it is about use cases, whether it is about demonstrating, wherever one gets the opportunity. And that's probably the reason, Santosh, I'm sitting here. Because I know that this is another opportunity for me to
Yeah.
voice that.
Yes. And I also feel there is a significant role of women and sustainability. There is this direct correlation, according to me. What is your take? Not just about leadership, even let us say program implementation, impact assessment, working. So, what is your take on women and sustainability?
When you ask me to define what sustainability means for it, I ended up by saying inclusive, right? Inclusion is a lot about making sure women are a part of that story. If you're trying to create solutions which are sustainable, and 50% of our population is women, right? Then how are they going to be a part of it, right? That can't be an afterthought. Whatever we're designing, programs, technology, we have to make sure that we are designing keeping that in mind. Otherwise, 10 years down the line, we'll say, oh, sorry, we've kind of lost this whole battle because women are not a part of it, right? So unless it's right from the beginning, whatever, whether it is about education, whether it is about natural resource management, livelihood, one has to make sure that women are
Yeah.
part of the overall programmatic design. And also they have to be contributors to designing that.
Yes.
We cannot have an approach to say, I have been doing this, so I can tell you what a woman wants, right? You need to hear their voice. You need to make sure that they are contributing to it.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll still be stuck on saying, okay, there is a 20-40% gap, there is this needs to be done. So for me, sustainability is a lot about making sure women are the central point of this thing, and we're talking about bridging the gap, right?
Right.
So a little bit more priority to that when we are designing solutions and programs.
And linking it back to what you said earlier, that's something which I've always told a lot of not-for-profit leaders when I engage with them when it comes to technology adoption. I'm saying technology, it can be anything. The product design should be with the lens of what is in it for me
Yeah.
when I am using. And if you are not somebody who can understand, empathize with that person, then how would you design? Then you will just make a product which may not fit for them. And what's in it for me, for that end user, is missing.
It can't be just for me, it has to be, yeah, what you said, the end user, right? So when we are designing something, we are ensuring that we have the farmer's lens in it, right? Even what we have built our AI-based application, Farmer Chat, because our teams have been working with farmers for 15, 17 years, right? We know the problems, we know the challenges. We are keeping that in mind. We have worked with the state rural livelihood missions in different states, which is basically women focused initiatives by the government. So we've had the experience to see what do women want, right? What is a woman farmer looking for, and then design the product. It's not like for us, while we have our tech team, engineering team, all of that, it's not like these people have just come and said, oh, let's design this, right? We made sure that our teams who've been a part of that story for so many years are a part of designing that, right? Like, I'll give you an example. When we launched Farmer Chat about a year and a half back, and we started with Bihar, we got 27% women. And we said, pause, because we need to understand why only 27% women. Why are we committed to a higher number as an organization, right? Even if you have to look at smartphone penetration, it's 35%. So we still said, at least let's push for a 35%. Why 27%?
Right.
So we kind of took a step back, looked at approach, looked at features, why women are not onboarding, why they are not engaging. And today we have enough data to say that while for us the cost of onboarding a woman is 2 or 3 times more of onboarding a male farmer, but they engage 2 or 3 times more of a male farmer. So once we understand that, we know where do we need to invest. We need to invest into onboarding them. We need to invest on certain features so that they can engage more with it.
Yes. So when you speak about farmers chat, one aspect you said is trust, because they have to build trust. I'm sure that peers also suggesting. But how much of data are they using? I mean, is it conversational or is it prediction? Is there anything? I just want to understand more about the farmers chat.
It's a AI-based application which is multimodal application. So one, it bridges all the challenges of the literacy barriers. So which is from language point of view, we already have over 15 languages on it. So for a farmer, it is what they're hearing and what they're asking is in their own language. So if you are a farmer from Orissa, then you can speak in Oriya and you'll get the answer in Oriya, which is a starting point of building trust, right? Because then the answer is something that I can relate to. Also, in terms of while we are using the LLMs from getting the content and the answers, but on top of that, we are making sure that we are doing a lot of reinforcement work with humans in the loop, where we are building evidence, where we are building in accuracy to get the content more accurate for a local consumption. So, so basically, it's a mix of what we are getting from the whole world in terms of the LLMs, also in terms of all the content that is government approved content that we worked with over the years, and also then making it more accurate by fine tuning it. So, and what the farmer gets is basically in terms of a combination of all of that in their own language, whether text or voice. And we also have a feature of image where if I'm a farmer and I see there's a discoloration of my leaf, I would be, I can just take a picture, upload it, and I'll get the right one, it diagnoses, and then also the advisory to say what's the solution.
Wow. So that means there's enough data to understand why. Okay.
There's enough data to identify what the problem is. There is enough data to make sure to predict certain things, right? And also to understand the user behavior. And so if I'm a farmer on Farmer Chat and I've already registered that I'm, let's say, a maize farmer or a rice farmer or a millet farmer, then the advisory that I would get is based on the choice of my crop.
Wow.
So it has enough data to be able to give you that kind of advisory. And as our queries are increasing, as our users are increasing, we have a few million queries by now. That is going to add to the data.
Learning.
Yeah.
So that also, in a way, it doesn't reduce unpredictability significantly, but it does take care of a lot of unpredictability in terms of what you can control, right? You should be able to control things which is in your control.
So a lot of unpredictability, we can't take care of it because a lot of this unpredictability is driven by either the market, the geopolitical situation, or the climate, right?
Yeah.
We cannot really control the geopolitical situation. We cannot control the climate. But what we can help is to make sure that they start getting accurate advisory which will help them to overcome these challenges. Right now, we are working on looking at the geopolitical situation and the whole fertilizer issue.
Yeah.
We are working on adding content to the our advisory, which will help a farmer to get information that with the increase in prices of fertilizer, what's an alternate approach they can move towards, which if you really look at it in the long run is behavior change, right?
Wow.
Because if you want them to move towards other ways, more cost effective ways of using solutions,
Local solution.
yeah, then this is a opportunity for us to move them towards it. Similarly, from a climate point of view, right? There are certain cyclones which are predicted, right? Now, if you're working in a state of Andhra Pradesh, in that particular belt where we always, or Orissa, where you always get cyclones, right? Now, looking at that, we can't, so it's not only about saying, oh, cyclone will come, but start preparing the farmers by giving them advisory and nudges around what are the practices which will help them to save their crops, or maybe move towards more climate resilient crops.
So you did mention government briefly, and government does have an agenda for digital transformation with a certain milestone. So are you working closely with that intention also in mind in terms of last mile adoption?
Absolutely, for us, government is a key stakeholder. While for years we have, especially for our video-based learning, we have institutionalized the approach by partnering with them. But we are pretty aligned while government is building the whole stacks and everything. We are pretty aligned to that. We have also been a part of Vistar when it was being conceived. Also, what we have built as a solution is basically, in a way, it is interoperable, so it can complement what the government is doing, right? So it is towards either work within the system or complement the system,
Right.
is what we are, our overall approaches.
And that's the only way to amplify the work. That is
Absolutely.
possible.
Absolutely.
Now let me put the lens back on you, because if any this is very relevant for a woman leader, because with being a woman leader you take a lot of hard choices personally, which we know. Second is professionally, you have to be more assertive at times. Like you said, you did have to take the choice, and sometimes things that a man would take for granted, a woman will have to assert, may have to assert more. You can throw some more light on that. But what about decision making in general? How has that looked for you taking hard decisions? Because how is that lens as a woman leader? What's your tip for people to take hard decision?
Sometimes I wonder, is that a different lens for men and women? I don't know. I think the approach is slightly different, right? At least that's what I've observed. And I think one needs to be very clear that what's your goal and who are you working for, right? So if you have to keep the organization in the center of your decision making, what is right for the organization, right? And you know that your value system is in place, then all the decision making becomes easier, right? Because you know that this is the strategy of the organization, this is the goal and the objective of the organization. Then the subjectivity reduces, right? Women have been blamed to be a little more subjective, but I think are just the way of delivering the decision is different, right? The objectivity is still there because I think I see with other women leaders, I see with myself that we know what we want to do, we know what we want to achieve, and then we take decisions which is keeping our value system in place and not compromising on that. And so then it's I don't till that radar is in place, I don't think any decision is a problem.
That's beautifully put. Please take note. So, okay, now for all the work that you're doing, and let's say 10 years down the line, what's your what's your hope that you see in terms of sustainability and the work that people do?
Uh, Hope in 10 years down the line. Um, Today, since my day and night is about thinking about farmers and how farmers can really benefit, I would just say that if you really need to solve a lot of world problems, India's problem, it is about addressing that segment, which is farmers. And 80% of our rural population is farming population. A majority of women in the rural area are dependent on agriculture in one way or the other. So, if you're able to solve their problems, help them to increase their incomes, make their livelihood more sustainable, address some of the challenges, make all the access easier for them, I feel we would be at a place where we'll be solving larger economic and social problems.
Yeah.
And for me, uh, that could be a very important and probably a starting point of solving larger problems. Um, Also, it's the farmer who's putting the food on a plate. It's a farmer who is also facing the challenges of the climate changes,
Right.
right? It's the farmers who are losing when there is a geopolitical challenge. So, if we are able to build up their capacity, if we are able to make sure that there's lesser risk for them, by giving them probably more accurate solutions, informations, advisory, access, policies, all of that, I would say that if all of that happens, then I see a more stronger community, farming community a few years down the
Building.
line. Yeah. Where women have a huge contribution towards it.
So you beautifully put it. You said for me or for most children, for farmer, the closest connection is the food on their plate. So, and if the food is cooked, they may not even realize or keep the farmer in mind. They might just keep the chef in mind. But when it comes to academic institution, not from a mere tokenization point of view, but to genuinely understand and empathize with what they go through. What is the role of what are the small things that you feel an education institution can have built in will help that connect? Because unless and until, like you said, if you're designing, that connection has to happen.
Yeah.
Correct. So for them to understand and they grow, you grew up as a army child, you saw a lot of terrain, you saw a lot of people, hence that delivery happened. But somebody who hasn't got that depth of exposure, how can we kind of bring that connection? Is it possible to do that?
In today's time, I think it's very easy because of the world of social media and reels. If there are enough stories that are brought out, right, and something that children in the foundational years are exposed to. Our way of education is evolving, of course. If you really look at how we all study geography, right? Today, when I am in the field, I start relating stuff to that, right? It's taken me so many years to relate to it. If we could make our education system in a way which is so easy for these children to understand and relate to, it will also help to move their attitude towards consumption, towards how they're looking at the crops or what is coming on the table, the wastage, all of that. I feel somewhere
Yeah.
a more relatable, maybe it's videos, maybe it's reels, maybe it is farmers coming and talking to them. That will really make the difference. We've been in rooms where we have, again, not very comfortable for both the sides, but we have brought in farmers into the room to tell the story, right? And these have been with the adult population, our age group, right? And we've seen the influence of something like that. So having that kind of exposure, understanding their stories, of course, it's not physically possible to take all children to villages and make them understand. But in terms of digital media, influencers, all of that, that can be a very big way of a more very productive way of influencing the children at a very early stage.
Yeah. So I think academic institutions aside, if you're talking of content, usually what I've seen is that, content is driven by capital. And there is little incentive for content which is beyond the capital thing to be done. So what's your final message? Because I think somewhere this is the larger mission, right? It is not something that is going to be capital driven. This is an investment that we do in ourselves, because to get the food, you need to ensure that you kind of strengthen the pillars that give you that food on the table. What would be your final piece of message or advice to the corporates and not for profit, etc.? And how should we all come together to make it happen?
There's this word collaboration, which is overused word,
Mm.
right? But I still believe in that. I believe that whatever you're building, whether you're the private sector, the government, or nonprofits, right? Whatever you're building, you need to have an approach of how we can come together, leverage what each other have built to really help the end user, help people at the last mile, right? Or making sure that our effort doesn't go waste in silos. I would just say that without really if we were to keep our own sense of competition aside, right, and really feel we want to solve larger problems, we want to make sure that the agriculture ecosystem on which the whole economy is in a way dependent, right, that strengthens.
Hmm.
I feel that we have to work on a more collaborative approach, and I'm saying it because that's our daily way of working also as an organization. It's not easy, but that has to be the way forward. And I would just say to everyone, if you could look at it from that lens, how you can partner, how you can collaborate to make something bigger, it will solve some of the problems.
Yeah, and if anybody has any ideas to how to do it, I think we are all
Absolutely.
you're welcome to share it with us. But this conversation has been eye opener for me in terms of all the people or the saviors who put the food on our plate and the work that you're doing to empower them and to facilitate their journey, and to have more women working alongside you to strengthen the ecosystem. Are you ready for a quick rapid fire? Okay. Data or relationships?
I would say both. Relationship really helps in building trust, and data gets you a lot of objectivity and logic to it.
Wow. One habit that you have recently included into your daily routine towards sustainability. Recent.
I would just say that very consciously moving towards eating more, may sound very cliched, but more organic and natural food,
Yeah.
because that really helps in terms of, making sure that farmer benefits more, the soil health is improved, and the climate benefits from there.
Wonderful. One book or idea that has influenced your thinking in climate.
It's been a while, Santosh, that I've got a chance to read a book, but I've been doing a lot of micro learning. And that I would just say that the micro learning on a daily basis really has been influencing me. But one recent paradox that I came across was that uh, it seems that we are using fossil fuel to make EV batteries to make
Yeah.
green energy.
Correct. That is something which has always bothered me. Saying more coal to make you green energy. So somewhere else, let the smoke be, and we'll have. Okay, that's great. Okay, this is my favorite. The misconception about the social development sector.
Misconceptions. That is a easy, unprofessional, voluntary based sector. I think it's a very intense, very professional sector which needs really complete commitment to it without getting paid like a private sector.
Heart and brain together.
Absolutely.
One word you would like to describe the future, maybe the next few decades.
Can I use 2 words?
Yeah.
Um, one word.
No,
It's
2 words, 3 words.
okay.
It's no pressure.
Geopolitical driven.
Yeah, lot of intent. Cool. Thank you. Now we'll move to the next. I'll ask you one
more
question.
section, okay.
Yeah, one more section. One question and you can ask. Do you think farming can ever be profitable?
Of course, it can be provided people get the right information, the right access, and also the right kind of investment into it to scale it up.
We keep saying that farmers need to be as aspirational, but do you think somebody would make their rights? One of the is if somebody were to do an assessment for their child when class 10, would farming be one of the aspirational direction that they will take their child?
I hope they would, but to be very honest, right now there's not enough evidence to say that it can be a scalable, sustainable income. But if, as I mentioned, with the right kind of investment, it can be.
And in agri-tech space, there's been significant investments which are coming in. Do you see that translating to action on the field and moving the needle?
Of course, the amount of investment has increased in agri-tech, but a lot of this investment has been about developing solutions which may not be addressing the need of smallholder farmers. And if more than 80% or 86% are smallholder farmers, then the investment in agri-tech needs to go towards designing those solutions. And probably that's the reason that we are putting all our heart and money into developing Farmer Chat, which is a last mile solution for smallholder farmers.
And there are 3 more women in agriculture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
That will. Anyway, investment into gender related stuff is challenging, but on top of that, for agriculture, it's even more challenging.
Right.
But yeah, that would really help to move the needle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Nidhi,
Thanks,
for
Santosh, for this opportunity. I hope, somebody would get motivated, especially women would get motivated to make sure that they're part of this whole agriculture, technology, AI ecosystem.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.